So I am doing a DevSecOps presentation here, but I do know that there's a lot of AppSec professionals who are way more knowledgeable than me. So this is more at the business side of things, and feel free to correct me anything that I do wrong here. Okay, so there's some holy grails that I want in any particular software delivery mechanism. You want to be able to deliver a product, you want to be able to deliver it fast, and you want people to trust it. Right? But you always want it usable, secure, defense in depth, add all the buzzwords that you want, and still deliver features. And so you always have that dichotomy between delivery and those non-functional requirements, which say it slows us down, we want to get to the money as soon as possible. We still have to do that. So, as a developer, quite a while ago, that gave me that big long list, I would have no idea where to start. I'd be, wait, what? I can build stuff, I can design stuff, but to get all those features in one release, I have no idea. Okay, so I'm from the compliance aspect of things. So what is compliance? Very generally, document what you do it, and prove you did it. Easy. But if you've ever been in a compliance program or a security program, it's never quite that simple. So how many people are familiar with compliance programs? Show of hands. How many people like compliance programs? Okay, so yes, we have to document our processes, we have to say what we're going to do, and then do it, which is obviously very hard. Software is not an easy thing to do. But if you've ever been surprised by an audit, and you haven't planned for how to collect evidence or describe what you do to other people outside the organization, that can be very hard, disruptive work. And if you're a dev, I don't think you like hard and disruptive work. So that show of hands, who likes compliance work? Yes, kill me please. So, to make it more interesting for the developers, easier for everybody involved, can we move to something called compliance engineering? And you're here because the answer is yes. So if you treat the problem of security compliance as a test, release, and observability engineering problem, you get a lot of benefits built right out of the box. And feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. So, why focus on compliance? Money, money, money. So, I like to say that compliance opens wallets, right? So, the product that I'm working on recently had a launch with Bruce Schneider, but one comment that he made came out, said, people don't like to spend money on security because they're only spending money on avoiding a risk that's sometime in the future. So he says, move to greed. Compliance is a sales tool. It's not for the security professionals. It's not for developers. It lets other people trust us and buy our product. So, according to Bruce, at least, greed is good. So, a general definition of DevSecOps from my point of view, again, from a business point of view, it's DevOps used properly to deliver and run systems in a secure and reliable way. Once you bring security compliance in that, you really increase that focus on operations, which when I was a developer, it was a separate room over there. Every time we had to communicate with them, it was an exercise in translation of the different terms, right? But when you do DevOps right, you build it, you run it, you carry the pager, and you have the tools to do the troubleshooting in real time. And DevOps is not magic. DevSecOps is not magic because it's just DevOps done right. So you have lots of terms for this. I'm sure you've heard a lot of them in this particular meetup, but there's DevSecOps, there's DevOps Sec, there's Rugged DevOps, and really it's all DevOps done right. But if you want to focus in on that, those are very good search phrases. And this is my particular product, Tehama. And don't worry, this is not a product talk, but it gives you the use case why you want to spend the time on compliance and security and get that buy-in to open up those wallets so you can actually build security. There's our logo. And our company has quite a history with delivering professional services to, as a third party to external organizations. And so there's always that question of trust. Who are these people called Pythian or Tehama, and why should I pay them? And more succinctly, why should I trust them with my highly valuable infrastructure? So we create a product to be able to deliver work in an audible manner. They can see anything that's going on in real time. We can prove the security of the system through an audit, and that helps us build trust with any particular client. Oh, and one thing, it's just a note here saying that it enables quick onboarding and connectivity. How many people have any horror stories about connectivity? So you get a gig, you need to log into the corporation, you need to do your work, and you want to get out. How long do you think that takes? Okay, so I forget exactly what the source is, but I did hear a Twitter conversation where somebody was working for some place in Portugal, but they had to get a laptop from, I think it was Austin, sent it to Portugal, get stopped at customs. They have to actually go there and say, yes, that's my computer. Oh wait, no, it's not. I don't actually own the computer. It's leased from this company who locks this one down. So it's like a 3-week gig for this outsourced company, but it took them 4 months to actually get connectivity. And we had, in version 1 of this product, same sort of things. We would get caught in legal battles, not battles, but negotiations, and things could take 2-3 months depending. And in version 2, the Tehama product, we're able to get connectivity in an hour, and you should have seen the faces on some of the people who had worked for this company for a long time. And of course, it's a security product, trust but verify. In essence, it's a secure product which then opens up the pocketbook to be able to become a compliant product, and then you get to actually build out the security that you want. So they decided it was mandatory at the beginning as a sales tool and a tool to build trust. And what was the secret sauce? Well, in good DevOps fashion, it was the whole team approach, right? So it wasn't developers building out the security and compliance program. It wasn't compliance saying, I'm going to go off in this room and write this bunch of things and then hand it over to them. It was getting right at design time, from the policy level all the way down, saying, okay, how can we enable delivery instead of blocking delivery? And then, of course, I'm not the AppSec guy, so you have to go down to the team level and say, these are the experts. They make the tool choices that deliver and make their lives better from a day-to-day perspective. And what about product testing, marketing, and legal? We need the whole team, because they're all stakeholders. Just not this kind. So what principles do we build into building out this program? It's that security and compliance is not the office of no. We want to build security in at the systems level, and we don't want to be compliant for compliance sakes. We want to make it secure, we want to demonstrate compliance, but the value is actually being secure, not doing a checklist saying, okay, we did the 1 check, the 2 check, the 3 check, and that makes it, when you're delivering something, when you have those checks in place, it allows a developer to have a lot more confidence in delivering things. They don't have to keep everything inside their head, right? You don't have to be a product specialist, a development specialist, a security specialist. You build in those feedback loops through the pipeline and the development process. And so from the compliance office point of view, saying, okay, we cannot get in the way. right? So we designed everything from the get-go to be a DevOps project and build it out for the whole system. So security is everyone's job all the time. And if you design it into the system, right, it's just how the software is delivered. It's not this test after, try and test it in after the fact. So going back to very old school where you have maybe 3 releases a year and the test is the last thing you do, you get all those change requests saying, no, it doesn't work. Same thing for compliance. So if you say that you broke your compliance program, like, no one told me I had to do that. Why didn't you tell me in the first place? That's designing it into the system. And because this is say what you're going to do it, and prove that you did it, you have to build in that audit evidence as you build out that product. And so that's not extra work. So again, do people have any horror stories about their compliance programs coming in the last minute and saying, okay, tell me what you did on that release, January 15th, 2015. How did you test it? Can you tell me? If you do this properly, it doesn't matter any particular change that you do. You're like, this is just how we do your work. All that documentation is automatically generated, and it's not out-of-band work before some particular audit event, no matter what compliance standard you're under. So you have your typical DevOps patterns: infrastructure as code, continuous delivery, continuous monitoring, learning from failure, and collaborative culture. And I always key specifically on the collaborative culture because that was the secret sauce. And really all the rest of those are practices that enable technical agility. So in this case, if we ever change the compliance program, or in the case of new regulations coming down, we just add it into the system. We get new information, and the system adapts to that quickly and easily. Of course, everything is some work, but it's not like you're designing or trying to fix a system that was never designed to change.
I have a question. It's a nicer one. If you know how DevOps is kind of about speeding up the entire process, so sometimes people complain that audit can make things slower. Do you feel it can add efficiency if it's done right?
Yes, so there's going to be a certain amount of overhead for audit no matter what you do. There is some bureaucracy involved, but you've decided to say, we've pulled that trigger, now how do you make that as easy as possible and as least painful as possible, especially for that Dev UX experience. Like if you give them, again, that Excel graphic saying, here, fill this out. Tell me what you did January 15th at 3:23. Well, hopefully I keep track of my time by the minute, I don't know. Versus when you built out this system, they're like, well, what change it was? It was QY-123. Okay, go look it up. Here's my work record, here's my commit, here's my testing that went through that commit, here it goes through all the way to prod. And so one key thing, this is stolen directly from the DevOps handbook, is change management and the policy level. So do people have any horror stories about ITIL? I see one person. Okay, so the classic ITIL horror story is a CAB board. So a change approval board that everything must go through before it can go to prod. And if you do that on a weekly basis, on Thursday at 3 o'clock, how fast do you think your velocity is? It really slows that down. So we do a standard change process that's pre-approved, and you move 90% of your changes here, even more if you can. And the only definition there is that it has a high success rate and a low mean time to recovery. You also have some high-risk changes. Okay, so you're gonna, you're gonna decide to roll your own crypto. Okay, well, that's a high-risk change. And we're going to go back to the CAB board this time. You're going to get stakeholders in there who actually know what they're talking about, understand the risks on the table, come up with a risk assessment, etc. But this should be like 3 times a year, like most, depending on what the scale of your organization is. And then again, emergency changes, you can't block a hotfix at 3 a.m., the proverbial incident, right? So you have still a release process, And you also have an approval process, but it's post-release. It's an out-of-band change. Okay, well that's, wasn't pre-planned, it could be sketchy, could be a random hack. Okay, well, then let's get an expert in the morning to take a look at it. Part of these compliance standards is that you have to maintain the deliverability, so you can't wait for a cab to be able to bring up your SaaS system. So I want to point out the DevOps Defense Toolkit, because this is where we get a lot of actionable ideas. So I'm talking about high level, but you can go through this free book from IT Revolution. And here's a sample. So it says automated security testing of the code environment is performed as part of the deployment pipeline. As per another section I don't include here, all production deployments must have a JIRA ticket. Deployers must add the JIRA ticket number to their commit, and that maintains traceability. And this is what you give to the actual auditors, saying, this is what we do here. This is what you're trying to test us on. And that's actually a trick for compliance, is that you get to decide what they test. You say it, right? If you don't actually enforce having a JIRA ticket, don't tell them that, because then they're going to look for that JIRA ticket. But again, this is also a sample of self-documentation. You have a JIRA ticket that goes through your release process that has a code change, obviously, that's been committed to your repository. It has your commit message. It goes through your automated testing, but also your manual testing in terms of pull requests and code review. And all that's documented within the system for each and every change. And we are concerned about the software supply chain. So we use images that are NOSs from trusted repos, pre-hardened according to various standards, and improving those all the time. All software dependencies are scanned, and patch management, which is always a big deal, is not an out-of-band change. It's just another change to go through the pipeline. And so, again, this is a CI/CD first methodology. It does really help if you're a cloud first. And so, again, the AppSec people will have lots of specific tools, and we saw some on the previous slide before. So we have static application security testing, in this case, TS-Lint with some Microsoft security extensions, dynamic application security testing, software component analysis, where we do check all those libraries within the code itself. And we also check the libraries at the image level for the EC2 instance, the host for the Docker containers, and then also in the Docker containers themselves. And there's still manual stuff because, again, we're talking about why don't we just give it to devs and let them run the tool and figure it out? Well, there's kind of I guess it's fairly old now, debate in the test world saying there's checking and there's testing. Checking can be automated because it's a known value with a known output. It's fundamentally deterministic, and you can automate all those things. Versus you bring a professional because they can deal with the unknown unknowns, right? And they can change that pipeline based on new products, new needs for the product. And so that'll come up in prioritization and planning. So in this case, security is an afterthought. They're brought in on planning. Okay, now you've decided to roll your own crypto. Okay, yes, we want to find that out at the planning stage instead of the release stage. Pull requests and code review, so there's a set of standards that they're supposed to look for, which then also brings security as a conversation between two developers, and you can go all the way up to like mob programming at that point. And so you also have that automated approval process, sorry, not automated, but pull request approval and release authorization, again, documented in Git, in Jira, etc. And monitoring, right? So we're just talking about the development stream at this point, but we do our releases out to prod. We also have in-prod monitoring. So we have alerting, which runs into incident response, where there's automatic detection, intrusion detection. I'm trying to think of, again, we've tested all the libraries for CVE on the way out, but we're also testing them in prod if anything comes up between this release and the next release. It's quite a robust incident response process, but I don't have enough time to get into that right now. And this is where, at least in my experience, cloud really comes in handy when you come into incident response and logging. You have so many tools in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, where you just flip the switch and you get all this for free, instead of now having a project to build out integrated monitoring throughout your entire stack. So that enables keying on certain things to alert and page out, but also then brings in that discoverability. Once you're at 3M, you have to actually solve something, right? So it's not, well, I forgot to log the server and I only have logs over here and I have to guess. Everything is pretty consistent. And so, again, if I come back to you, what change did you make on January 15th, 2015 at 3:23? This shouldn't scare you anymore, because you have evidence of your planning, your authorizations, your workflows, all the logs in your CI/CD scans, you have production monitoring, incident tickets, and actually quite key here that I'm going to key on is chat ops. So if you ever had to reconstruct a timeline from an incident a week ago, how good is your memory, right? So if you put this into a Slack channel and do all your troubleshooting there, have kind of, we use something called a CAN report, where every 60 minutes they say, this is the current condition, this is our actions right now, and these are what we need. So condition, entire site down, action, we're going to figure it out, needs, I need to wake up 5 more developers, right? But you have a timeline being built out as they solve that incident. They don't have to rely on their memory. And then once you move into a blameless postmortem, you already have that structure there. You can always gather new information, but it's not that hindsight is 20/20, where you say, I should have done this, I should have done that, because now, well, obviously I shouldn't have dropped the database, but it seemed like a good idea at the time, right? If you're a developer, you're going to blame yourself at the end. I should have never dropped that database. But this, the structure this chat ops gives you an idea of why that decision was made based on the evidence before, without that post hoc judgment of your actions. And what were the results? So the last pen test, external, had no findings. Security and compliance work is not exceptional. It's just planned in the normal backlog. You don't get a lot of pushback from product, dev, test about why do we need to do this other than our normal day-to-day features that are supposed to be making us money. The first one, type 1, passed without complications, with kudos from the auditors about how well organized it is. And that's not me, that's my program manager, Manisha, doing a lot of good work. But also the fact that all that evidence is already in that stream. So once you go to an auditor and you have a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about this particular change, that's where they're going to go scratching. Versus if you say, okay, you want to know about change January 15th? Here's everything. Let me know if you have any questions. And they're like, no questions. That's what you want to hear. The second one, type 2, and side note, that's quite a bit harder than the type 1. Type 1 is a point in time, so 1 day, versus type 2 is a 6-month span. But it had no major out-of-bound work for developers' compliance. Yes, we had to go tap them on the shoulder and say, can you go get me change X, Y, Z? But that wasn't, we already knew where that evidence existed, we knew how to collect it, and we knew who was responsible for it. And that was a lot easier than trying to kind of Splunk a code base or Splunk some logs after the fact when you're trying to get an audit out the door. And we passed that. And continuous improvement of the logging and monitoring. So we've already switched from an initial elk stack structure to, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but a new Office stack. And so they're continually adding stuff to the logging and monitoring to improve that discoverability and observability of the system, and also that instant response. And that IR and post-mortem process is well established, and especially that blameless part. So we all make mistakes. And this process really lets you dive into why something failed, but not putting that on one particular individual. And I have a lot of references for you. So I'll publish the slides out, and you can take a look at these particular sections of the DevOps Handbook, the DevOps Audit Defense Toolkit, new book Accelerate by Nicole Fosgrim, a few other open source pieces of documentation that was used to build out this entire process. And the most recent thing I added was how the human brain spies security, which was that. Let's move to greed. Any questions?
I have a question. Would you say that adopting DevOps and this, like a CI/CD pipeline with all of the, I'm not sure if the word's telemetry, but like the self-documenting stuff that you talked about, that makes it makes doing the compliance work so that you pass an audit like less work for developers because it's like self-documenting?
Yes, a lot less. So you have to build it into the system, but again, the worst case scenario there is that you've not done any planning on how to gather evidence, and then you come up and say, okay, there's an audit month, and we need you to prove that everything was available, secure, and private for the last 6 months. You're like, okay, you could have asked me that 6 months ago. So there is some work. So we are building out feedback loops, so you'll get stuff from TS Lin saying, fix your stuff. You'll get stuff from the rest of the scanning thing saying, fix your stuff. But that's better than finding out in prod. So that's just quality, and you have your risk tolerance or your investment level for any particular type of quality, where security is a subclass.
Yeah, so you mentioned configuration as code, right? That's one of the key parts. What's your experience with managing secrets when you use a solution like that? Because it seems to me like years ago, we used to tell the developers, don't hard code secrets into your source code, moving it upstream. Now, if we put configuration as code, how do we solve the problem? Like, what's the best option for that?
Well, there are better people to answer that question than me. I know we're doing AWS best practices for token management. This is our internal product API tokens, authorization tokens for the product itself. Inside the product itself, there's also key management for the external users. So we definitely don't code anything. Trying to think. There's a few privilege keys in it which are dealt with by the governance level, but most everything on the application level I think is day-to-day business. You go and look up the key, you get access to your particular service, and you do the thing that you want to do. Does that answer enough of your question?
Yeah, I guess.